Documentaries are about the people that you meet and the stories you can tell. Stories of tragedy, laughter, hope and desperation, across faraway lands or right here in your own backyard. This podcast brings these stories to you, the listener, so that you can experience the adventures of documentary filmmaking in audio form while embarking on daily adventures of your own. Welcome to Barefoot Media's Stories Within Stories podcast with your host, Simon-Holland. Dave Trevawn is a singer-songwriter famous for his gravelly vocals and soulful lyrics. While on set, Dave shared his remarkable story of growing up in a religious cult where recorded music was banned. Despite the tough restrictions, Dave managed to sneak in cassettes from the Beatles, which served to fan the flames of music in his blood. Now in his 50s, Dave is recording original music and finding freedoms that he was denied in his childhood. Dave, you've got a particularly interesting story. Can you tell us, to start, how'd you get into music?
Well, my older brothers played. I was born in a very strict cult religion, and we had a piano and guitars and musical instruments at home, and all the family played. Mum and Dad both. Mum played the piano. I learnt violin as the first instrument in primary school, and used to accompany Mum on the piano and whatever, and then I diversified into guitar and piano myself. So
you were playing hymns and that kind of stuff. Like, what was the kind of sort of stuff that you were playing?
It was a lot of hymns, especially from my parents playing, but I more branched out into, playing some rock and roll tunes, a bit of Elton John or the Beatles or Neil Diamond or whatever.
Neil Diamond. Do you remember that Seinfeld episode where Kramer was like, there's two types of people in the world, people that like Neil Diamond and people that don't.
I like ABBA as well, so,
Yeah, and I mean, they're obviously, so when you break down their music and you try and play it, you go, these guys are geniuses, the way that they do things and the way they structure their songs and the melodies and pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was in awe of them because we were not allowed to have pre-recorded music. So I, had a tape recorder, and I would have a few pre-recorded tapes that I had hidden from my parents and the rest of the family and whatever. But that only got me to listen to a certain genre of music because you'd get on an artist and you'd like them, and so I'd never listened to the radio, so I didn't have a diversity of music, knowledge.
So you just hammered, because tapes, it's like side A, side B, side A, side B, so you just hammered.
That's it.
So tell us a little bit about this religion, and why it was, what is it about that aspect that made it controlling? Why is there no structured music?
Well, when I was in there, you weren't allowed to have computers or mobile phones or TVs. You went to church every day of the week, all practically 4 times on Sunday. You weren't allowed to associate with people that weren't in the church, so you didn't socialise with anybody else. And you were led to believe that, you were the only chosen race of people that were going to go through to heaven, and everyone else was hellbound outside the confines of these walls,
And so what was your perspective like internally? On the outside, you're obviously doing the right thing, but what do you feel like inside?
It didn't make sense. The whole concept didn't make sense to me. So, yeah, I just wanted to get out of there to get away from the control.
Yep. And how old were you when you sort of started to break away? And was it a thing where you're asking questions, or was it sort of a religion where you just couldn't say anything?
Well, no, you couldn't say it. I mean, I was, at a young age, I was a bit of a rebel, so I was excommunicated from the church a lot of times, and I was forced to go and live in caravans beside people's places for 6 months at a time. I'd have to give up working in the family business and go and get another job somewhere until I got so-called right and was let back into the church and to go back and live at my family home again. So that happened a few times through my teenage years.
And what was music to you at that point? Was that the kind of, the refuge that it is for a lot of teenagers? Is that something you could bury yourself into, or what got you through those tough times?
It was exactly the music. And I'd come home from church sometimes on a weeknight and just get a book of an artist or something and just go through and play every song. I got one night. Jesus, I didn't know you'd take me out. Anyway, I remember one night I was playing through all the Beatles books, and the old man came in a rage, and he grabbed all the books and he said, "You're not playing that filthy music in here anymore. That filthy John Lennon. He said he was greater than Jesus Christ." And he took all the books out and he ripped them all to bits and poured fuel over them and burnt them in the backyard. Yeah, it was
How old were you at that point?
I think I was about 19, 20, something like that, about that. It was 24 before I finally pulled the plug and left and tried to forge a new life.
19, 20, you're just starting to like develop as a man and that kind of thing. Did you feel like you could say anything to your dad, or what was the situation?
No, you couldn't, because the coercive control that's within the organisation of the church, nobody can say anything. So it's just passed down from generation to generation to generation. You know, I love my old man, but I know why he acts like he does. He's dying at the moment. I mean, he's old. He's 88 in a couple of days, and he lives just up the road with my brother. They've actually got him in a nursing home now, but anyway. And it's just sad to see. I don't have a relationship with him, but he's going. But that's the life I chose to get out of there, and I understand their ridiculous ideals and laws, but I'm not under those laws, but I am affected by them.
Because I'm kind of like I'm not really drawn to groups or cults, or like even aerobics class or something would be a bit too much for me. Yoga gets a bit crazy. But what is it about people collecting together? What's the refuge like that? Is it that the outside world's too nuts and that they can create like a bubble, or what's the kind of the draw for that kind of thing?
You mean in their church meetings, you mean?
Yeah, church and just belonging to something like that, and then trying to close out culture like music and,
Well, they don't close out the culture of music. They encourage it in there even more so now. They all are allowed to have drum kits and bits and pieces that I wasn't allowed to when I was growing up. But it's still within the confines of their people within that church.
Why do people collect into that, and why block out?
Well, I think a lot of people need clubs. A lot of people need churches. A lot of people need those props or whatever to outside of themselves, to something to believe in, But it just hurts me the way people are so gullible and are led. And it's not just them as a cult, the whole act of Christendom, it's only a religion that came about in the last 2,000 years. What about the fucking last 400,000 before that? It's not about the Jesus Christ story. I mean, it's such bullshit anyway. My interpretation of the Bible is that they had it all worked out. They had all the money-making systems happened. Jesus comes along, smashes all the tables, says, "What are you doing earning money in my Father's house?" So they say, "Who's this prick?" They hang him up and murder him, and then they preach about him for the next 2,000 years, and in his name formed harsher religions and churches and breakaways, all doing exactly the thing he didn't want to do, making it all about money.
Yeah, it always seemed about controlling people, didn't it?
It was.
Like anything. And I mean, even now you look around society and everyone loves a good rule. Like we saw in COVID, people just, the rule gets passed down, like made in a day, passed down, and then people start bludgeoning their neighbors over with it, going, you're not doing this, you're not doing it. And I think that's the way it's always been. People want to try and control other people where possible. Yeah.
And that was the biggest eye-opener for me, and that's why I think I had such an awakening last year, and it was so full on for me, because my brother died of the COVID vaccines in last April. And after it all started to die down, I got time to think about it and things were happening, that I realised that like for the first 25 years of my life, I'd been fed this bullshit from people that I respected or whatever, and told, do this and you'll go to heaven, do this and you're going to be saved, wah, wah, wah. Then in 1990, I left that and just got on with normal life. And then 3 years ago, there was all these other learned people. You go there and you'll be saved. Do this and you'll be saved. Wear this and you'll be saved. More bullshit, all about control. So it's, I think, why, I don't know, the music's come back again, and I've got it back with a bit of a passion, and I can tell a few stories through that,
There's a very cinematic image in my head when you talk about, when I picture you as a kid listening to that tape deck under the bed, with maybe a sheet over your head and a torch, that kind of deal, It's like doing the wrong thing, thinking I could be sitting here, if I get caught, I'm in trouble. Like, what was that? What was can you describe that scene for us?
You certainly get a sixth sense about, you get to feel if somebody's knocking at your door, even though you've got headphones in, it's pretty hard to hear. So it gets pretty intense. But yeah, I don't know. I concentrate fairly hard, so the songs went in fairly deep.
Yeah. What do those songs mean to you now when you listen to them? And what are some of those songs?
Well, basically all the Beatles catalogue, the whole lot of those. A few, quite a few of Elton John's albums, Neil Diamond, Hot August Night. I can just play those songs straight off the cuff because they're just in there.
Yeah. And how'd you get hold of those tapes? Was that contraband?
Oh, yeah. It'd be a sneaky thing to get into the music shop and buy them, but yeah, you didn't get caught.
Oh, you snuck in, you went to a music store?
Oh,
and
yeah.
Bought them?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I got caught a few times with these things and got kicked out of the church for a while for having that. Once for having a radio as well.
Yeah.
That cost me 5 months in a caravan. Yeah. Pretty harsh crimes for having a fucking radio.
What's the caravan situation? Where do you go for that?
They hired a caravan and put it next to one of the church elders on his land, and I had to live there. Yeah. I wasn't allowed to live on my parents' land.
Out in the countryside, or?
Oh, they were just over the road. It wasn't far away. No, in Armidale.
In Armidale, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you had to live out of a caravan for 5 months.
Mm-hmm.
What, going to school?
No, I had to went and got a job.
Yeah.
Because I worked at the family business before that, but once I got kicked out of the church, you have to leave the family, you can't work with them or whatever. So I just went and got another job.
Do you have friends that that's a really formative period of your life. Do you have friends from the church still? How do you keep in contact, or what do you do now?
I do have a lot of friends from the church because it's, even though we all go our different ways, it's a bit like surviving Auschwitz, you have something in common.
Yeah.
Surviving such a regime. Yeah.
And are they still in the church?
No, I have some friends that are still in the church, but very little see. I mean, I wouldn't call them friends.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of us that left the church. I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that got out of there.
Oh, I get you.
Yeah. Quite a few leave all the time because, yeah. Those that have got any salt to them.
Yeah. I think it's like, that's really a point of difference as a songwriter because, those things have to come from emotion and experience. And I remember when I was writing punk songs at 16, I didn't have much to draw upon. You're angry at a teacher at school. You could only write so many songs about that, or some bully or some hot chick across the road. There's only those things, but as you get later in life and you go through experiences, you got a lot to go. And I'm kind of lucky. I sort of skated through life a bit like Forrest Gump. I sort of had a pretty good run. But a lot of people go through a lot of shit, and they are the ones that have got something to really sing about. When you sing their guts out, that it's from somewhere. So yeah, I think you got a little bit of that. And when you listen to your voice, just talking, you can hear the passion in it too. Is that something, because we've come onto this and it's a pretty relatively new project for yourself. So it was during COVID, that time to think and that time to go what do I want to do in my life? Where did this come from for you?
I've always played music, and we've had, we've been, but just cover songs, I've never been able to write a song myself and never, and something happened in August and I just sat down at the piano and this beat came to me and within the space of 15 minutes, I'd written this song.
From nowhere. Is it God? That'd be ironic that it came from. Where did things like that come from?
Well, yeah, I don't know. They definitely come from your subconscious because I didn't, think about it in my conscious, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then 2 nights later, I sat bolt upright in bed at 2:30 in the morning and scribbled out 3 pages of another one. So, yeah, it was all a bit of a shock. And because of the nature of the songs as well, I had to go through a bit of guilt in that, how can I how can I take such great songs and twist them around, Yeah. I hope he forgives me.
Yeah, exactly. And so with that inspiration, now there's sort of an urgency